Breath of the Wild was a game about loneliness, an amnesiac hero uncovering the truth of his kingdom's collapse, learning to survive and overcome the hostile wilderness left after the Great Calamity. Its direct sequel, Tears of the Kingdom, is instead a game about connections, about bringing Hyrule's next generation together to fight against an ancient, yet familiar evil. Both games are set in the Kingdom of Hyrule, a vast land steeped in history and legend. The story of this kingdom stretches back thousands upon thousands of years, though many details from its histories have been eroded or distorted by the passage of time or even lost entirely. Breath of the Wild explains that Hyrule's history is inextricably linked with the story of the Calamity Ganon, a primal evil that has appeared time and time again. An ancient legend tells of a war 10,000 years ago, where an emergence of the Calamity had been repelled by a hero, a princess, and the power of the Sheikah tribe. This nightmare returned a century before Breath of the Wild, a terrible, apocalyptic event that resulted in the death of the king and the destruction of most of the kingdom. The Calamity was eventually defeated by Link, a Hylian knight, after recovering for 100 years in the Shrine of Resurrection. Very little is known about the Calamity. Ancient texts suggest that it was once a Gerudo man, but now is more akin to a force of nature. It does not communicate, it can't be bargained with, and it wants nothing but the destruction of the kingdom. Every time it appears from the same place, directly underneath Hyrule Castle itself. After destroying the Calamity, Zelda spent the next few years rebuilding Hyrule, accompanied always by her chosen knight, Link. She moves into the house Link bought in Hateno village, where she oversees the construction of a school to educate Hyrule's next generation. To do this, she employs Bolson, the old head carpenter, who has since passed the torch to Hudson, our beloved president of what is now called Hudson Construction. With Hudson's help, Hyrule began the monumental task of restoring what they had lost to the Calamity. The president not only worked to expand Tarrytown in Akkala, he also built a new fortification over the sacred grounds just south of the castle, Lookout Landing, which quickly became a thriving community at the center of the country. His company set up resource caches all over the land. He was at the center of a civilization just beginning to piece itself back together. Ganon itself is once again fading into myth. Children are born and grow up believing the Calamity to be little more than a fairy tale. And to be fair to the children, almost every single relic of the ancient Sheikah was hidden or destroyed after the Calamity's defeat. The divine beasts, guardian shells, and shrines all removed from the land. It's possible that some of the old technology was processed for parts, used in the construction of Skyview Towers. These were designed by the Sheikah scientist Pura and built by none other than Hudson Construction, intended to survey their surroundings and provide accurate map data. Pura and the other Sheikah scientist, Robbie, had been in the royal family's service ever since before the Great Calamity, responsible for all manner of research into ancient technology. And after Calamity Ganon was defeated, they put their minds to Zelda's restoration project, eventually constructing the Pura Pad. This device is entirely different to the Sheikah slate used by Link in Breath of the Wild, which was over 10,000 years old by that point. This one is much newer, a tool designed to help Zelda with her work. A prototype had been built by Robbie, then the device was refined and improved by both scientists, including the addition of the camera rune. Pura wonders if there will be a time when everyone in Hyrule carries their very own Pura Pad. We knew from Purah's diary in Breath of the Wild that she already possessed her own Sheikah slate even back then, and used it to install and experiment with an anti-aging rune. Like Robbie, Purah is well over a century old, but prior to the events of Breath of the Wild, performed an experiment that resulted in her reverting to the appearance of a small child. At some point after that game, she became fed up of being treated as a kid and of needing jetpacks to reach high places, so adjusted her device, accelerating her development until she resembled a 20-year-old woman. Zelda wasn't only interested in technology, but archaeology and history. She created the Zonai Survey Team, a task force to discover and analyze ancient documents and ruins. She appoints Turo, a particularly keen and knowledgeable Hylian, as the leader of this team, and the group begins their research into Hyrule's mysterious history. Ruins from the ancient Zonai can be found all across Hyrule, even during Breath of the Wild, but very little was known about them, other than the fact that they were a powerful race of magic wielders who vanished suddenly long ago. They predate even the ancient Sheikah, the clan whose advanced technology had helped to seal the Calamity Ganon 10,000 years ago, but the truth behind them had been lost to time. This time of peace and hope wouldn't last, however. An insidious substance known as gloom began afflicting the people of Hyrule, causing them to fall ill after coming into contact with it. Gloom doesn't just physically harm people like Calamity Ganon's malice, it withers them. Small exposure to it can be cured with direct sunlight, but more severe contact will permanently wound or kill outright. Eventually, a secret staircase was discovered, leading into the forgotten foundations of Hyrule Castle, from which the gloom appeared to be seeping into the kingdom. Zelda, of course, volunteered herself for the expedition. She explains that the royal family have always been aware of these underground chambers. When she was a child, she asked her father, King Rome, about them, but was told that seeing them for themselves, or even discussing their existence at all, was forbidden. King Rome had warned her that no one must ever venture beneath the castle, not even one of us. A warning that had apparently been passed down through the royal line for as long as anyone could remember. The princess was not alone, of course. Before venturing underground, she travelled to the Korok Forest alongside Link, her chosen knight and sworn protector, a hero worthy of wielding the legendary Master Sword capable of repelling evil. During the Great Calamity, the Master Sword was terribly damaged. To restore it, Zelda had left it in the care of the Deku Tree, where it rested for 100 years while Link recovered in the Shrine of Resurrection, and Zelda used her sacred powers to keep the Calamity Ganon imprisoned within Hyrule Castle. The Deku Tree explained that the Master Sword can not only heal itself, but grow ever stronger if it is bathed in sacred power. The stronger the power, and the longer the sword is exposed to it, the greater its power becomes. The Deku Tree believes that the sword's true power may in fact be limitless. This is presumably how the Master Sword was healed over the course of the century before Breath of the Wild. It was bathed in the sacred energy of the Deku Tree and the Korok Forest, enough to restore it to its former strength. The Master Sword was wielded by Link during his showdown with the Calamity Ganon, used as it had been countless times before to banish the darkness that threatened Hyrule and restore peace to the realm. Afterwards, it seems that Link once again laid the blade to rest in the Korok Forest, where it slept until he had need of it once more. Now, with a shadow once again looming over Hyrule, Link draws his sword once more and travels into the forgotten foundations of the castle to protect his princess and uncover the source of the mysterious gloom. The pair descend, traveling deeper and deeper into the bowels of the castle. They walk down broken staircases and through caves littered with cracked stone, where the walls glow with an eerie light. Ominously, the blade of the Master Sword lights up, a sign that the pair are approaching an unseen evil. Eventually, Link and Zelda encounter ruins different to the Hylian stonework closer to the surface. They're decorated with ancient symbols, identifying them as the work of the Zonai. According to Zelda, the Zonai were a civilization from the distant past, who lived in the time of earliest legend. They possessed godlike powers and had a prosperous civilization of floating islands in the sky. Link and Zelda discover statues depicting what they believe to be Zonai individuals, strange alien figures with long ears. The pair continue their descent until they reach a large chamber, where they're attacked by Keese, weak monsters that are quickly obliterated by the Master Sword. This isn't just any ordinary room though. Its walls are decorated with elaborate murals depicting events from Hyrule's distant past. In particular, a terrible conflict that became known as the Imprisoning War. In total, there are 7 murals in this chamber, though the last 3 are obscured behind rocky debris. The first depicts a Zonai descending from the sky, welcomed by Hylians on the surface below. The Zonai brings with them 7 artifacts, secret stones which can amplify the powers of whoever wields them. The second mural shows a Zonai forming a bond with a Hylian woman. According to Zelda, her ancestors, the first of Hyrule's royal family, were born from a union with gods who had descended from the heavens. These murals imply that these gods were the Zonai, and that, together with Hylians, they had founded the Kingdom of Hyrule. Princess Zelda, then, is a distant descendant of the Zonai. The next 2 murals immortalize a tragedy. First, an ominous figure stealing a secret stone from the woman from the previous image, and next, the same dark figure commanding his servants in a fierce battle. A red wave of his power spreading across the land, and the blood moon glowing in the sky above. These 4 murals show Hyrule's earliest history and the outbreak of the Imprisoning War. The 3 hidden murals show the war's end, which we'll come back to later, but it's important to remember that these obscured murals exist right at the beginning of the game. Hyrule's ancient history is, quite literally, set in stone. Link and Zelda continue on from the mural room, through a dark corridor, until they emerge in the imprisoning chamber, and come face to face with the secret that their kingdom was built on. A petrified figure is bent backwards in the center of the chamber, apparently frozen in place. At his chest, he is held by a glowing arm, which trails off into a spiral of blue-green energy. This is the body of Ganondorf, the same figure depicted on the murals stealing a sacred stone and leading his army against the Kingdom of Hyrule. The Imprisoning War is named for his imprisonment. He has been trapped here, deep below the surface, since time immemorial. As the pair approach this haunting discovery, the hand holding Ganondorf's body twitches, then falls limp. A stone, whose teardrop shape matches that of the secret stones of the Zonai, falls from the back of the hand onto the cold ground. Zelda taps the stone, then picks it up, before it begins to glow with a bright light. But before she can begin to study it, the unmistakable sound of a heartbeat echoes through the chamber. Horrified, the princess can only watch as the body begins to twitch and convulse, cracking with the first movement after countless eons of imprisonment. It almost rights itself, then drops back, its head hanging upside down, before it snaps towards the pair, and its eyes light up, burning with an insatiable, timeless hatred. Great tendrils of concentrated gloom explode from Ganondorf's chest, flooding the chamber and lunging directly at the princess. But Link meets it with the Master Sword, jumping in front of Zelda and parrying back the evil. But this foe is beyond anything they've encountered before. The gloom rushes forward once again, crawling down the Master Sword's blade and onto Link's arm, severely wounding him. It's worth reminding that this Link is already an accomplished hero. Here, he is at the peak of his power, after being trained and augmented by the trials of the ancient Sheikah during Breath of the Wild. During this opening segment, he has 3 full stamina wheels and a total of 30 hearts. But not for long. The gloom shatters Link's strength, reducing his hearts back down to 3, the same amount he had when he awoke from the Shrine of Resurrection, his body weak and his mind wiped. Not only this, the gloom burns right through Link's champion's tunic and horrifically wounds his right arm, leaving it scarred and glowing with dark energy. Even the Holy Master Sword, a weapon designed by the goddess Hoshyla specifically to oppose evil, is not immune to it, and the blade is stained with gloom. A final tendril rushes towards the pair, and Link once again tries to parry it, but this time it's too much. The Master Sword breaks. Half of the blade splinters into tiny, sacred shards. One piece, however, flies towards Ganondorf, narrowly missing his neck and running across his cheek. It cuts into ancient flesh, and his blood begins to boil, but no more. The blade of Evil's Bane is broken, leaving only a single scratch on the Demon King. For the first time in millennia beyond counting, Ganondorf speaks.
Was that the sword that seals the darkness? A blade that shatters so easily against my power cannot save you from me.
Somehow, Ganondorf knows both Link and Zelda by name. He claims that someone named Rauru had placed his faith in Link, and mocks him for his weakness. He arches back and releases a final wave of gloom, this time upwards towards the cave's ceiling. It pushes an ancient stone block, and the cave begins to collapse around them, and on the surface, Hyrule Castle itself begins to rise into the air. Finally free from his imprisonment, Ganondorf allows himself to fall into the endless blackness below. Exhausted, Link drops to one knee, and before Zelda can come to his aid, the floor beneath her gives way. Zelda drops into the same dark pit where Ganondorf had vanished, and Link, without a second thought for his injury, leaps after her. But he misses. Zelda falls, helpless, until a golden light envelops her and she disappears. This is where the princess and the hero are separated, and the story of Tears of the Kingdom splits in two. Link is caught mid-air by the hand that had previously held Ganondorf, and pulled upwards into the light, where he eventually awakens on the Great Sky Island. Zelda, however, wakes up dazed and confused on what appears to be the surface of Hyrule, though it isn't the Hyrule she knows. Instead, Zelda finds that she has somehow been transported into Hyrule's distant past, to a time not long after the kingdom's founding. Here, ages removed from her own time, she uncovers the mysteries of the ancient Zonai, and becomes the central part of this game's cyclical narrative by setting up the events that will eventually occur for Link, who remains in the present day. Zelda is woken by two strange individuals, a couple who claim to be King Rauru and Queen Sonia, the first rulers of the Kingdom of Hyrule. Zelda is, of course, Hyrule's princess, the daughter of King Rhoam Bosphoramus Hyrule, which can mean only one thing. She has been transported to a time so far back in the past, it has become legend. King Rauru and Queen Sonia are the figures depicted on this mural. Theirs was the union that the Kingdom of Hyrule was built upon. This means that Sonia is a Hyrulean woman, and Rauru is a Zonai. It's worth noting that it doesn't seem that this figure on the mural is Rauru specifically. We're told later on that he is one of only 2 remaining Zonai, and it was his ancestors who had descended to the surface, bringing 7 secret stones with them long, long ago. So even though Zelda has been transported to the distant past, it's still a long time after the golden age of the Zonai. Even this far back, their civilization is ancient and shrouded in mystery. The only Zonai left are Rauru and his older sister, Minoru. They're tall, animal people with incredibly long ears. It was said that Hylians had long, pointed ears so that they could hear the voices of the gods. Both of the Zonai are magical in different ways. Minoru can separate her spirit from her body, but Rauru has the power of light, a sacred force that can repel and destroy evil. They both have a third eye on their foreheads, representing their enlightenment that opens when they wield their magic powers. Sonia's appearance closely resembles Zelda's. In fact, she claims that she can sense a blood connection between Zelda and herself and King Rauru. She can also sense that Zelda possesses not only the power to control time, like Sonia herself, but also Rauru's power of light. This means that Zelda is the distant descendant of this couple, the very first members of the Hyrulean royal family. We'd never see any of the couple's children in-game, but the very fact that Zelda is descended from them, and what happens to them later on in the story, means that their children must already exist somewhere, and would go on to continue this bloodline through the ages, all the way up until the birth of this Princess Zelda. Zelda explains to the king and queen that, in her time, something terrible is happening, but that she does not know how she got here or how to get back to the future. Sonia advises her not to panic, to come back with them to the castle where they can come up with a plan. Rauru suggests that Minoru, the only other remaining Zonai, may be able to help. At this point in history, the Great Plateau appears to have been the centre of the Kingdom of Hyrule. In Breath of the Wild, the old man describes this place as the birthplace of the Kingdom of Hyrule, and it seems that this is true for the kingdom founded by Rauru and Sonia. A different Temple of Time, one built by the Zonai, is found in its place on the plateau, and it seems that this era's Hyrule Castle is found nearby too. Breath of the Wild's Hyrule Castle does not yet exist. Rauru and Sonia's castle is built here on the Great Plateau. In this time period, Hyrule appears largely uncharted and untamed. Aside from the Great Plateau, the main island of civilization, this Hyrule is even wilder than the one we know. Central Hyrule is a forest rather than a field. Death Mountain features a smoke ring, much like its appearance in Ocarina of Time, and the dueling peaks are, at this point, still one mountain. According to legend, the peaks were created when a dragon split one mountain into 2, a legend that seems to be true. Rauru's Hyrule is defended by shrines of light, mystical stones that glow with spirals of green energy. In the early days of the kingdom, Hyrule was plagued by monsters, which assaulted and terrorized its people. In response, Rauru and Sonia built shrines to imprison this evil. Each of them works somehow as holy seals to keep Hyrule safe. In this time period, shrines of light are found in different places to the ones Link will eventually encounter thousands of years in the future, like the ones that defend the Great Plateau. But another purpose of the Shrines of Light is to illuminate the terrifying darkness below Hyrule, the depths. Far below the surface lies a dark world, a warped reflection of the world above it completely without light. That is, except for the light roots, tree-like structures that are found directly below shrines on the surface. The name of each light root is just the name of the shrine above it in reverse, and they're activated by Zonai magic. It's likely that Rauru and Sonia created the light roots specifically to illuminate the depths. During this time, a chamberlain was appointed to record accounts of the lives of the king and queen, to preserve their stories for discovery in the future. These give insight into the history and personality of the royal couple. We learn that Sonia was once a priestess, born on the surface. She is exceptionally intelligent, more so than even King Rauru, who values her wisdom and insight on matters both large and small. The king himself was jovial, with an easy laugh. He often set aside his royal duties in favour of hunting, only returning to his responsibilities when sought out and scolded by Sonia. After her sudden appearance in this time, Zelda is welcomed into King Rauru's castle and given new clothes by Queen Sonia. But she is still focused on finding a way to return to her own time, and so Rauru accompanies her to meet his older sister, Minoru. Like Zelda, Minoru is a keen researcher. Her study is filled with books, and she's said to become so engrossed in them that she forgets to eat. Minoru has a particular fascination with Zonai constructs. They're described as vessels for the spirit when the body fails, so with her ability to separate her spirit from her body, she hopes that she can extend her life. She would eventually show Zelda her greatest work, a giant mecha. Rauru's spirit later claims to have overseen the creation of the constructs, from rangers and culinary constructs all the way to soldiers. They're all powered by the same strands of green energy. Perhaps they too are vessels for spirits in some way. The creation and maintenance of this technology required a lot of energy, which was mined in the depths. Huge mines were found in all corners of the world, deep underneath every town. There, constructs mined for zonite, a luminous mineral that can be processed into charges. We're only told that zonite contains a mysterious energy, but considering that it's mostly found in the depths, a realm of the dead, this energy could be connected to spirits, similar to luminous stones, said to contain the souls of the dead. Minoru shows a particular interest in Zelda's Purapad. She notes that it is definitely not of her era, and asks to borrow it for a while to attempt to restore its teleportation function, and to research the device further. She hands the device to a nearby steward construct who shelves it away. Minoru, like Sonia and Rauru, possesses her own secret stone. Hers amplifies her power of spirit. Rauru's stone amplifies his light powers, and Sonia's her control of time. A secret stone can detect and react to an individual's innate powers, and will change its appearance and colour to match. Once a stone is in somebody's possession, it becomes engraved with a symbol that represents its power. These symbols are based on real-world kanji, only stylized and each featuring an eye design. Rauru's stone is engraved with the symbol for light, Minoru's has the symbol for spirit, and Sonia the symbol for time. But Zelda also possesses a stone engraved with the symbol for time. Minoru explains that, just like Sonia said, Zelda possesses the power to control both light and time, but the Zonai notes that the secret stone she carries appears to amplify her time power specifically. So it appears that a secret stone will only strengthen one particular aspect of an individual's powers, even when that individual holds multiple different abilities. Zelda came into possession of this stone when it fell from the hand imprisoning Ganondorf. At first, this stone was white in colour, but once Zelda touched it, it reacted to the powers within her and became a yellow time stone. This, Minoru explains, is how Zelda ended up in the distant past in the first place. Secret stones don't create new abilities or grant their wielders new magic, They simply amplify the powers that are already found within someone. When she fell into the crevice deep below Hyrule Castle, it was her own innate power to control time that transported her to the past, only amplified by the possession of a secret stone. This means that there isn't an easy way to return to the present day. If Zelda doesn't know how she was able to manipulate time in the first place, she won't be able to reverse it. Except for one sinister possibility. Minoru also explains that there are stories about a forbidden act called draconification, that to swallow a secret stone is to become an immortal dragon, one blessed with eternal life, but that to become an immortal dragon is to lose oneself. This would provide a way for Zelda to return to her own time, but it would mean sacrificing everything, losing what makes her, her. Instead, Rauru decides that Zelda should spend some time with Sonia, who also has the ability to control time and a time secret stone that matches Zelda's. Together, Rauru hopes, they will be able to study and understand Zelda's powers more, and perhaps find a way to send her home. Rauru's young kingdom was strong, but not without its own troubles. In the desert to the southwest, a dark storm was gathering. Hyrule was watched by envious eyes. The Gerudo are a race of tall, powerful warriors, as tough and as dangerous as the desert they call home. The Gerudo are notable for being almost entirely female. Only one male is born every century, a man destined to become their king. In the time of King Rauru, the Gerudo leader was called Ganondorf, a man of great power and great ambition. Ganondorf was known to be a warrior of unmatched strength, a master of all weapons who could move his hulking mass with impossible speed. But he was also an incredible sorcerer and was able to control darkness in the form of gloom. From the desert, Ganondorf watched the young kingdom and plotted its downfall. Hyrule would bow before him. This land would be his to shape as he saw fit. At first, Ganondorf kept his true ambitions secret, but he was known to be dangerous. He repeatedly ignored invitations from King Rauru to swear fealty. The Gerudo King's first move against Hyrule occurred during the time Princess Zelda was sent back to, an initial assault to test the kingdom's military strength. Ganondorf and a small force of Gerudo warriors loyal to him stand at a high vantage point and unleash the raw power of the desert against Hyrule. One Gerudo woman plays an ornate flute, and the eerie music calls forth a swarm of Molduga, giant monsters who swim in the desert sand. Each of them is a powerful threat in its own right, but this many together is unprecedented. Guards stationed on the Great Plateau's walls spot the oncoming horde and sound the alarm. Before long, King Rauru himself appears, with Queen Sonia and Zelda just behind. Though this is an era without an incarnation of Link, this Hyrule is anything but defenseless. Without a word, Rauru brings his hands together in front of his face. His secret stone, which amplifies his innate power to use light to dispel evil, starts to glow. Behind him, Sonia raises her right arm and beckons for Zelda to do the same. The pair's identical secret stones start to glow as they add their power to Rauru's. Notably, Zelda's power glows with a much larger, brighter light than Sonia's, perhaps indicating that, even without training, she possesses a much greater power. Rauru keeps his eyes set on the approaching horde, and focuses the energy between his hands. Suddenly, the third eye on his forehead opens, and his power explodes outwards. When the beam subsides, the remains of Ganondorf's first invasion lies dying in the sand. Disappointed by this outcome, the Gerudo King realizes that brute force will not be enough. Rauru, augmented by his secret stone, is too powerful. His ability to repel evil is too great a defense. But the King of Hyrule had literally shown his hand. Even from a great distance, Ganondorf spots the secret stone shining on Rauru's wrist. These Zonai artifacts are the key to Hyrule's strength, but could also be used against the kingdom. If Ganondorf could not break Hyrule by force, he would instead try deception, to lull Rauru and his kingdom into a false peace. Sometime after the Molduga assault, Ganondorf, accompanied by his retinue of Gerudo warriors, travelled to Hyrule Castle to swear fealty. In the throne room, they are received by King Rauru, Queen Sonia, and Zelda. The two Gerudo women directly behind Ganondorf stand out for wearing gold masks. These two are presumably among his highest ranking servants. They also flanked him during the Molduga attack. On their left shoulders are sashes with Hylian lettering, which translates to Koume and Kotake, identifying this pair as the witches seen during Ocarina of Time and the Oracle games. In Ocarina of Time, these witches, who eventually combine to form Twin Rova, are said to be the 400-year-old surrogate mothers of Ganondorf. They look considerably younger here, so they might not have raised this Ganondorf, but it's clear that they're still important to him. Their names can also be found marked on the Gloom set of weapons used by Ganondorf himself. Ganondorf and his Gerudo kneel before the throne, pledging his service to Rauru in return for acceptance into his kingdom. The king accepts, commending Ganondorf on his status and welcoming him into his realm. But even as Rauru speaks, Ganondorf's focus was instead on the secret stones, ancient talismans of unimaginable power hanging from the necks of Zelda and Sonia, and from Rauru's wrist. For his first action as an official part of the Kingdom of Hyrule, Ganondorf chooses to honour the king with thinly veiled insults and threats in his own throne room. Mockingly, he muses that when Rauru's ancestors first descended on these lands long ago, they must have seemed to be gods. He points out how, by taking a Hyrulean woman as his wife and now ruling this land as its king, Rauru has risen above his admirable lineage. The Gerudo King values power, and power alone, and the Kingdom of Hyrule protects the weak and defends the innocent. In the time before the kingdom's founding, the world had been a place of chaos, a brutal land where only the strongest thrived, a time that Ganondorf believed had more vigour and fighting spirit. Ganondorf rejects the idea that one of the godlike Zonai should dare to control this land. He despises the peace that Rauru and Sonia have ensured. But the Zonai are gone. Their time is over, and they no longer grace the world with their presence, except for Rauru and Minoru. Rauru defends himself. He claims that even if something happens to him, his kingdom will endure for generations to come. This could be another indication that Rauru and Sonia do indeed have children, who will inherit the throne and uphold Rauru's peace even after his death. One king dismisses the other, and Ganondorf climbs to his feet and turns to leave, signaling his retinue to do the same. Zelda, who had watched the exchange from Rauru's side, is concerned about trusting Ganondorf. She believes that his heart holds dark ambitions, and notes that even his name gives her pause. The name Ganondorf should probably do more than just give her pause, considering she had previously kept a dark being named Ganon imprisoned for a century, but nevertheless, Rauru explains that he is well aware of the Gerudo King's evil nature. He claims that he wants to keep Ganondorf close, where he can keep an eye on him, and assures the princess that she need not worry. This entire throne room scene is incredibly reminiscent of a scene from Ocarina of Time, where Link first finds Zelda in her courtyard, peering in through one of the castle's windows. In both games, Ganondorf travels to the castle to swear fealty to the king on his knees, though secretly plans to overthrow him. In both games, Zelda warns the king about Ganondorf's intentions, and the king ignores her, a decision that would lead to tragedy. The Chamberlain's stone tablets describe an unsettling development in this time period. There are whispers of a strange lady who walks around the castle at night, a woman who appears identical to Princess Zelda in all ways but one. Her eyes are lifeless and dead. When asked, Zelda herself remembers nothing of these walks. Something, or someone, stalks Rauru's castle in the black of night, wearing Zelda's face like a mask. Sometime later, Zelda sits under a gazebo with Rauru and Sonia, attended to by constructs and protected by a handful of royal guards. The princess reaches out her hand and accidentally knocks a bowl off the table. It falls towards the stone floor, then stops and retraces its path back onto the table. This is a display of Sonia's time power, strengthened by her secret stone. The Queen explains that it's like drawing out an object's memory, coaxing it back towards a certain moment in time. Zelda is, as of yet, unable to properly control the time powers she inherited through Sonia's bloodline, and so she remains trapped in this time period. The three discuss Zelda's predicament. She wants desperately to return home, but also to lend her support to this time, where a conflict with the Gerudo King seems all but certain. But Sonia is exceptionally perceptive, and knows that there is another reason Zelda needs to return home: Link. At the mere mention of his name, Zelda smiles and describes the hero to Rauru. He is a royal knight, one originally appointed to be her protector. He is dedicated and refuses to back down from any challenge. He is very strong, and his heart is good and true. Zelda's feelings towards Link were a central part of her character in Breath of the Wild. Eventually, it was her love for him that awakened her sealing powers and prevented the total collapse of her kingdom. And even now, while trapped in a different age, Zelda has complete faith in her knight. One night, Princess Zelda requests a private audience with Queen Sonia. In the quiet courtyard outside the castle, the pair meet. No guards, no Rauru, just Sonia and Zelda. Except, it's not Zelda at all. It's the mysterious doppelganger, who wastes no time in drawing a Gerudo knife and hurling it towards the Queen. But the blade stops dead, inches from the back of Sonia's head, frozen in time. Sonia turns and faces the doppelganger. She always knew the true purpose of this meeting, and the true identity of this mysterious clone. This is not Zelda. It is a puppet of Ganondorf, an illusion summoned with his dark magic. From behind a stone pillar, the real Zelda steps out, her right hand outstretched, engulfed in a golden light. She had been the one to freeze the dagger in time. Her training with Sonia has allowed her to refine and better control her abilities. With a click of her fingers, Zelda sends the blade spinning back towards the Phantom, where it drops harmlessly at its feet. With a haunting laugh, the doppelganger vanishes into dark magic. But Ganondorf was one step ahead. The Gerudo King emerges from the shadows and hits Sonia in the back with such force that it kills her almost instantly. Before her body even hits the floor, Ganondorf reaches out and rips the secret stone from her neck. Zelda weeps over Sonia's lifeless body, but Ganondorf simply laughs, a wild, vicious laugh that echoes across the plateau. A sick smile on his face, Ganondorf turns and walks away. Sonia's secret stone glows gold in his hand, still marked with the time symbol that reflects the Queen's inner power. But it was her stone no longer. Ganondorf holds the stone in front of him, and it changes to reflect his own magic. The stone grows in size before a new symbol is engraved on its surface, a symbol that represents darkness. Again, secret stones do not grant their wielders new powers, only amplify whatever powers they already have. Ganondorf was, of course, an exceptionally powerful magic user, with the ability to control and manipulate dark, evil forces. Now that it is changed to reflect these abilities, Ganondorf's secret stone boosts his power significantly. Zelda can only watch in terror as the skies turn a burning red, and Ganondorf is engulfed in an aura of gloom. His secret stone glows, and he screams. And Ganondorf, the Gerudo King, is gone. The Demon King stands before Zelda, a colossal blood moon eclipsing the sky behind him. But he wasn't finished yet. He raises his hand, and a beam of dark energy launches upwards, striking the clouds and exploding into smaller missiles of gloom, which rain down on Rauru's kingdom, each of them congealing into a beast under Ganondorf's control. Rauru steps out into the courtyard, too late. He sees Zelda holding Sonia's body and cries out. As he mourns his dead wife, Ganondorf mocks him, claiming that he took the godlike power of the secret stones for granted, and that his queen was merely the first victim of Rauru's arrogance. He spits that Rauru tried to control him, and that he will die knowing that he failed. This is Ganondorf's jealousy and pride showing. He hated the power that Rauru held over him, power that he coveted. Furious, Rauru runs towards the Demon King, but is stopped by Zelda, who knows that, despite the King of Light's sacred powers, fighting against Ganondorf would mean certain death. The Demon King raises his hand and sends forth a torrent of gloom towards Rauru, who uses his power to shield both himself and Zelda. Without delay, the princess picks up her Pura Pad and uses it to teleport herself and Rauru, as well as Sonia's body, to safety, thanks to Mineru's work on enabling the transportation feature in this time. They had escaped, for now, but there was no time for relief. Queen Sonia was dead, and Ganondorf possessed the power of a god. The menace was unleashed. With a secret stone amplifying his powers, there is nothing left that can stand in the Demon King's way. Under the bleeding moon, legions of monsters are born into the world, given a single instruction: to sweep over Hyrule, to eliminate this kingdom and its allies. The conflict that would become known as the Imprisoning War had begun. With the Demon King unleashed, the Hylians weren't the only ones in danger. Just like during the present day, Rauru's Hyrule is also home to the winged Rito, the aquatic Zora, and the mighty Gorons of Death Mountain, all of whom were threatened by Ganondorf and his armies. Even the Gerudo, Ganondorf's own people, were not safe. Those that refused to join him were destroyed, and before long, the last free village in the Gerudo Desert fell under his control. In the Forgotten Temple, in the northwest of the kingdom, Rauru calls for a summit to discuss the war against the Demon King. The leaders of the Gerudo, Goron, Zora, and Rito tribes gather, along with King Rauru, his sister Mineru, and Zelda herself. Rauru unlocks the door at the back of the temple, where he reveals his secret weapons, 4 additional Zonai secret stones. Zelda, Mineru, and Rauru himself, of course, already possess stones, so these 4 are bestowed upon the leaders of the tribes. At first, each stone is gigantic, its surface a plain and unmarked white colour, But once in the possession of new wielders, the stones change to represent their powers, just like Zelda's and Ganondorf's had done. The stones transform to reflect the power of water for the Zora, wind for the Rito, fire for the Goron, and lightning for the Gerudo, boosting each leader's abilities to new heights. We're never told the names of these 4 sages, nor do we learn anything about their history. However, they each wear a mask shaped like an animal, an elephant for the Zora, a bird for the Rito, a salamander for the Goron, and a camel for the Gerudo. These match the designs of the 4 divine beasts, the colossal war engines built by the Sheikah to defend Hyrule against the calamity that occurred 10,000 years before Breath of the Wild. Rauru's Hyrule and these 4 sages predate the divine beasts, so it seems likely that the Sheikah chose designs to honor these ancient sages, who had fought alongside the king in the earliest recorded conflict with the Demon King. Now each possessing a secret stone, the group of 6 individuals swear to serve Rauru, the 7th, and are each granted the title of Sage. This group, the 7 Sages, represents the most powerful individuals in Hyrule at the time, save for the Demon King himself. If there was any force that could stop him, this was it. On the evening before the sages plan to confront the Demon King, Zelda and Rauru speak in private. The princess reveals the truth of the events that led to her ending up in the past. She had found a man underground. Now that she has seen Ganondorf transformed by the power of the secret stone, she realizes the man underground was Ganondorf, who had lived on through the ages all the way up until the present day. She believes that the battle tomorrow will not end in victory. She has already seen its outcome, and she knows that they will fail to stop the Demon King. Rauru admits that Zelda may be right, but that it is his duty as king to try and protect his people. He blames himself for Ganondorf's ascension. Like he had told Zelda in the throne room, he had known of the Gerudo King's evil nature for a long time, but failed to stop him. Rauru says that should they fail tomorrow, then their last line of defense will be Link, Zelda's knight, who carries the legendary blade of Evil's Bane, and will meet Ganondorf in the far future. He believes that the future Zelda knows was one where she had never appeared in the past, and that there is a reason that Zelda was sent back to this time. The following day, the Alliance track Ganondorf down to the depths in the north of central Hyrule, and in an underground chamber, they face the Demon King. They outnumber Ganondorf 7-1, 7 secret stones against Ganondorf's own. All reason suggests that they should be victorious, but Ganondorf's power was beyond anything they could have imagined. The Demon King breaks each and every sage. His gloom, just like it had done in Zelda's time, decays their weapons in their hands, and burns their bodies with dark magic. Zelda's fears had come true. Despite their power, Rauru's alliance had failed to stop Ganondorf. Rauru, seeing no other option, commits himself to one final act for his kingdom. He closes his eyes, takes a deep breath, and begins to focus his power. Seeing this, the sages launch another attack. They hurl their weapons towards the Demon King, who dodges and parries each of them with ease. Zelda, weak and injured, uses her time powers to recall the weapons back towards Ganondorf, but he'd seen this power before, through the eyes of his phantom Zelda. He turns back towards Rauru, ready to end the fight, but Rauru isn't there. The King of Light uses the same trick Ganondorf had used to kill Sonia. Zelda's recall attack was a distraction, allowing him to move behind the king unseen. Time seems to slow as Rauru closes the distance, his right arm glowing with his power of light, strengthened by his secret stone. With sacred force, he strikes the Demon King in the center of his chest, forming the seal that would bind him for millennia. Ganondorf knows exactly what Rauru has done and what it will mean. He laughs, saying that thousands of years will pass in the blink of an eye. The seal only delays the Demon King's inevitable return. But Rauru answers with hope. Because of Zelda, he knows that when the seal breaks, a swordsman who wields the Master Sword will face him. Ganondorf spits his final words in this time. He says Link's name and that he looks forward to their meeting. Rauru and Ganondorf freeze in place. The light fades from their eyes, and the maelstrom of sacred energy erupting from the King of Light slows into a glacial coil. It seems that Rauru's seal on Ganondorf works in a similar way to the Shrines of Light, structures built by Sonia and himself to seal away monsters that had threatened his kingdom. The foundation of this seal is Rauru's power of light, a direct counter to Ganondorf's own dark magic. The Imprisoning War is over, the King of Darkness is sealed, and the King of Light with him. The pair would remain here, petrified for thousands upon thousands of years, in what became known as the Imprisoning Chamber. To ensure that the king's magic held, the Hylians constructed a new castle directly on top of this sacred site. This was built to be the new seat of the royal family, Rauru's descendants, but more importantly, it was a fortress, designed to protect the seal from disturbance. The castle became the literal heart of the kingdom, not only located in the very center of Hyrule, but critical to its survival. Rauru's strength contained the Demon King's powers, but not entirely. As strong as this seal was, Ganondorf was stronger. His hatred seeped out from his chest in thick, red fog. Deep below Hyrule's surface, the sheer force of his rage boiled like the heart of a volcano for millennia, until it erupted into Calamity Ganon, emerging from directly below the castle. This monstrosity was defeated, however, by a princess of Hyrule and a warrior wielding the soul of a hero. But not forever. Rauru's seal imprisoned Ganondorf himself, but he had unknowingly trapped Hyrule into a terrible cycle. Every 10,000 years, the Demon King's hatred would manifest as a calamity, claw its way out from below Hyrule Castle, and try to burn the kingdom to the ground. The calamity was formed from malice, which differed from gloom. Gloom appears to be the direct, dark magic of Ganondorf himself, while malice instead seems to be a physical manifestation of his unstoppable rage. This happened time and time again, right up to the ancient calamity, 10,000 years before Breath of the Wild, the foe defeated with the help of the divine beasts. Interestingly, this calamity appears to have been repelled not by a Hylian Link, but a hero from a different race entirely. The ancient hero's aspect, granted to Link for completing all of Rauru's Shrines of Light, transforms Link into the ancient hero, the warrior shown on Impa's tapestry. This hero wears Zonite armor, which would have been incredibly ancient in this time, but he doesn't seem to be a Zonai. His ears are much smaller, and his skin is more green than the Zonai's grey. He also has red hair and a tail, neither of which are present on Rauru or Minoru. Whatever the truth about this ancient hero is, his victory was immortalized in legend, setting the stage for the most recent emergence of Ganon. This ancient calamity caused a split in the Sheikah tribe when their technology was banished by a fearful king. Most fled into the arms of their goddess Hylia, but others grew to hate the kingdom that had punished them, the ancestors of those who would form the Yiga clan. 10,000 years later, the calamity struck again. Ganon used Sheikah tech to build temporary bodies, like the Blights. When it's fought in Hyrule Castle, it bursts from a cocoon, where it had been desperately trying to form a new body, and was forced to fight Link in an incomplete state. Given that Ganondorf's actual body was sealed deep underneath the castle, the calamities that emerged on the surface seemed to be desperate, subconscious attempts to create a new one outside of the seal, appearing again and again throughout history until the most recent one managed to weaken Rauru's hold. It seems that the Great Calamity was the most destructive of all calamities. Ganon occupied Hyrule Castle for 100 years, and the ancient structure fell into ruin. Though the beast was eventually destroyed by Link and Zelda, the damage to the castle was severe enough to disturb the seal it was built upon. Rauru's hold on the Demon King weakened ever so slightly, but this was enough for Ganondorf to begin building his power once again. So even though the princess and the hero had ended the calamity, their kingdom wasn't yet free. Gloom began seeping from deep below the castle, poisoning those who came close. This, in turn, caused Link and Zelda to investigate, and the pair entered the forbidden tunnels that lead to the imprisoning chamber, eventually stumbling onto Hyrule's oldest secret. After so many thousands of years, Ganondorf has withered, his ancient skin pulled tight over sinewy muscle and dry bone. But Rauru has fared worse. All that remains of the King of Light is his sealing hand, complete with his secret stone hanging from his wrist. As soon as Link and Zelda enter the imprisoning chamber, Rauru's hand lets Ganondorf go. It's as if he had been desperately holding on with the very last of his strength, and let go once he sensed the arrival of Zelda and the swordsman she had promised would defeat the Demon King. The secret stone that Zelda picked up was Rauru's light stone, only when she touches it, it changes to reflect her power of time. This substantially boosts an ability she doesn't even know she has at this point, to the level where, when she falls, she's able to subconsciously warp to the distant past. When the seal breaks, Ganondorf sends gloom upwards, pushing an ornate Zonai pillar. This, in turn, lifts Hyrule Castle, opening a great chasm and once again seizing the kingdom's capital as a trophy. Again, this castle was built in this place to protect this seal, and now it's been forcibly moved, like a cork from a bottle of incredibly angry champagne. But Zelda's journey in the distant past hadn't ended with Rauru's sacrifice, of course. Though this was the event that would eventually set the entire plot in motion, Zelda remained stuck in this time after this, with Sonia dead and Rauru sealed. Even before the showdown with Ganondorf, she understood the truth of her situation. By travelling back through time, she had entered a time loop. In the distant past, she helped create the very situation that led to her travelling back in the first place. But why? There must be a reason, some purpose for her to fulfill in the distant past. Zelda stands in the Temple of Time on the Great Plateau, alone. She thinks of Rauru's sacrifice, of his promise that Link would meet Ganondorf in the future. But she knows how this future will play out. Even after so many years of imprisonment, the Demon King will still be too strong. His gloom will break the Master Sword and critically injure Link. For a brief moment, Zelda despairs and admits to herself that she doubts that Link will be strong enough to defeat him. Suddenly, Zelda's secret stone glows. Something calls to her, and she steps outside of the temple's back door, out onto the long southern pathway. At the end, she discovers a glowing golden orb. Her stone shines again as her time powers surge, and the decayed Master Sword appears before her, what remains of the Blade of Evil's Bane after the attack in the far future. The sword pulses with a blue light as Fi speaks to the princess. Fi is known as the voice within the sword, the spirit created by the goddess Hoshyla in a distant age. Fi is, in essence, the consciousness of the Master Sword, designed to serve the hero who wields it. After Demise's defeat at the end of Skyward Sword, she had lain dormant, but could still communicate to those with sacred powers, like Zelda during Breath of the Wild. At the end of that game, when Zelda's long struggle to save her kingdom had ended, she claimed that she was no longer able to hear the voice within the sword, a sign that her sacred powers were fading, and that she was no longer bound to the path that destiny had chosen for her. Now that her kingdom needs her strength once again, her powers return, and she's able to hear the voice. Fi assures her that, in the future, Link survives the Demon King's attack, and claims that the Master Sword has travelled back through time to reach Zelda and recover its strength. Finally, she understands her purpose: to heal the blade with her power of light, to become the weapon with which Link will defeat the darkness. King Rauru was sealed below the ground, but the other sages had survived the battle. One by one, Zelda travels to each of them and warns them of the future. She tells the Rito, Zora, Goron and Gerudo sages about Link, and how, in the distant future, he will face the Demon King when the seal breaks. She knows that he will not be able to defeat Ganondorf by himself, and so asks each sage for their support, that their descendants would awaken as a new generation of sages, to fight alongside her knight. Each sage not only promised Zelda this, but also to leave their secret stones in the safety of their temples, where they could eventually be recovered by their distant descendants. Zelda also visits Mineru, the Sage of Spirit, who was terribly injured from the confrontation with the Demon King, and explains how the decayed Master Sword arrived from the future. She remembers how, when she discovered Ganondorf's body, even the tiniest sliver of the Blade of Evil's Bane had been able to cut the Demon King's flesh and boil his blood. If the sword had been stronger, it would have been a weapon that could oppose him, a sword to seal his darkness. Zelda tells Mineru what the Deku Tree had said, that the Master Sword can absorb sacred power, to not only heal itself, like it had done for a century before Breath of the Wild, but grow indefinitely stronger. Because Zelda not only possessed time powers, but also the same sacred light powers that Rauru had wielded, she could pour this light into the blade. Mineru estimates that it would take centuries for the blade to become strong enough. There would be no way for Zelda to provide the blade with her sacred power for long enough, except for the forbidden act, draconification. Mineru objects. If Zelda goes through with this, she will never be able to return to her original self. She would lose everything that makes her her. Her body, mind, and soul would be lost. But Zelda understands this. She knows just how terrible this sacrifice will be, but that this is her purpose. This is why she was sent back, how she can turn the tides in Link's favor. She must restore the Master Sword to its original strength, and beyond, and deliver it into the hands of her chosen knight. Mineru sees Zelda's determination and concedes. She says that, as a Zonai, she shares the blame for these events. After all, it was a Zonai secret stone that had amplified Ganondorf's powers to such terrifying heights. She, too, commits herself to saving the future, and puts her faith in Link. As the Sage of Spirit, she also controlled one of Hyrule's temples, the Spirit Temple, found in the depths below the Faron region. The Spirit's Temple was found only a short distance from the construct factory where she had experimented with building vessels for her spirit, but her secret stone was housed in the safety of the temple itself. Together with Mineru and the other sages, Zelda lays the foundations for another plan to help Link in the future, the raising of the Sky Islands. The Chamberlain's tablets mention that they were a first-hand witness to the lifting of the Temple of Time, which, under Zelda's instruction and the power of the sages, was raised skyward so that it, and the surrounding area, could become a sanctuary for Link to recover in after the attack. The area directly north of the Temple of Time, originally known as the Garden of Time, was raised with it. The Chamberlain's tablets were also lifted into the sky, so that Link could eventually uncover the history of this ancient royal family. With the plans for the future decided, Zelda and Minoru say their final goodbyes, and reach the point of no return. The princess returns to the platform at the back of the Temple of Time, which is still on the Great Plateau. This shouldn't be the case. The Chamberlain's tablets describe Zelda as working with Minoru to raise the temple and the Garden of Time, yet it is still found on the surface during Zelda and Minoru's farewell. It could instead be the case that the temple and surrounding land was raised by the sages sometime after this point under Zelda's instruction, but the timeline of these events is slightly unclear. Regardless, Zelda stands on the platform, holding her Purapad. Minoru has already separated her spirit from her body, and instead chooses to house herself within the device itself, where she can remain until the distant future to assist in the final battle. The Purapad is given to a steward construct for safekeeping, with instructions to deliver it into Link's hands. Zelda, however, could not separate spirit from flesh. She had only one way to reach the future and provide assistance to her hero, by sacrificing her very self. Looking down at the shattered Master Sword, Zelda promises once more to restore it, to transform it into the weapon that will defeat the Demon King. She tears her secret stone from her neck and braces herself. She may be trapped in another time, but she was still her Hyrule's princess. Like Rauru had said, it was her duty to give everything to protect it. She swallows the stone and the sky darkens. What she had just done was wrong, an act so terrible that the Zonai had forbidden it. She would never die. She would endure forever as a being beyond her understanding, all to protect her kingdom, her people, and her Link. For a second, nothing happens, until a golden light explodes from her chest. Racked with an agonizing pain, she reaches out with shaking hands and grabs the Master Sword, and clutches it close to her chest. She is terrified. She has brought an overwhelming power upon herself, a power that would strip her of everything. In her final moments, she again calls out to Link, "Protect them all!" A gigantic sphere of light rushes outwards, completely swallowing the princess. The same light that had appeared when she had used her sacred light powers against the Calamity. The 4 remaining sages can only watch from near the castle as Zelda is consumed, and a dragon emerges from the light. As it winds its way up into the sky, the light dragon roars, a terrible, heartbreaking cry. Zelda's golden hair has transformed into the dragon's mane, and the Master Sword itself is fastened onto her forehead. Though Zelda's eyes have been twisted by the power of the Secret Stone, they show that some part of the princess's consciousness lives on. As the dragon ascends, it weeps, and its great tears rain down across the kingdom. It twists through the clouds, then vanishes. Zelda is gone, and only the light dragon remains. The light dragon roamed above the clouds for thousands and thousands of years. All the while, Rauru and Ganondorf remained sealed below the castle. It lived as Hyrule rose and fell and rose again, as calamities emerged and were repelled time after time. At many points throughout Hyrule's history, this would mean that there were 2 Zeldas alive at the same time. Whatever princess of Hyrule was born on the surface, and the light dragon, hidden far above the clouds. This dragon existed even during the Great Calamity. when a younger version of itself, the princess who would become the dragon, fought to defend Hyrule against Ganon's malice. For ages beyond count, the Master Sword was bathed in the Light Dragon's sacred power. The scars of the Demon King's wounds were healed, restoring the blade first to its original strength, then beyond. Zelda's sacrifice meant that the blade would absorb enough power that Ganondorf could never break it again. This also means that, for much of Hyrule's history, 2 Master Swords existed. We don't know anything about the whereabouts of the blade during the distant past, but at some point between this time and the present day, it must have appeared, in order for it to be used by the hero during the Ancient Calamity, and for it to be enshrined in the Korok Forest before Breath of the Wild. And all the while, the same sword, just at a different point in its timeline, was stuck in the head of the Light Dragon far above. At some point during these many ages, a new Temple of Time was constructed on the Great Plateau, one closely resembling that found in Ocarina of Time, while the original remained above the clouds, forgotten. Zelda's draconification brings the other dragons into question. Dinral, Naydra, and Farosh are the servants of the springs, described as ancient spirits who took the form of dragons. Minoru stresses that the consumption of a secret stone to cause draconification is strictly forbidden, a legend passed down by her people. So there is precedent for ancient Zonai having swallowed secret stones and become eternal dragons, a terrible sacrifice. Dinral, Naydra, and Farosh in particular seem to have been worshipped by the Zonai, represented by the Ember, Frostbite, and Charged robes, said to have been used in ancient rituals. Their faces are notably different to the Light Dragons, with much longer ears and hair like Rauru's. Perhaps they were ancient Zonai, long before Rauru's time, who made the forbidden sacrifice. With the full story of the Imprisoning War complete, we can return to the murals found just below Hyrule Castle. These were obviously built sometime after the war ended, to immortalize Hyrule's history and to act as a warning for what lurked in the next chamber. Again, Link and Zelda eventually encounter murals showing the Zonai's original descent to the surface, Rauru and Sonia founding Hyrule, Ganondorf killing Sonia and taking her secret stone, and the Demon King leading his armies against Hyrule. But there were 3 more murals hidden under piles of stone. This can eventually be cleared by Link at the very end of the game, revealing the story's conclusion. First, a mural depicting Rauru and the 6 sages, complete with their secret stones facing off against the Demon King. Notably, Princess Zelda herself is depicted here, even though these murals existed long before Zelda ever travelled to the past. The next murals continue her story. We see Zelda at the Temple of Time, receiving the broken Master Sword from Link through a portal to the future. And finally, we see her sacrifice. The Light Dragon climbs into the heavens, with the Master Sword buried in its head. Zelda's story is a time loop. She had always travelled back to the past to set these events up. She was always involved with Ganondorf's imprisonment, even before she claimed Rauru's secret stone. This is the reason that Ganondorf already knows Link and Zelda's names. Even at the beginning of the game, before we see her time travel, it's already happened. The past is already written. The ink is dry. Like the Great Calamity that brought Zelda's Hyrule to its knees, the Imprisoning War was a tragedy. The young kingdom had lost its beloved king and queen, and Zelda sacrificed herself to an eternal solitude in the sky. Everything rested on the shoulders of a warrior in the distant future.